welcome to the My Slice of Life podcast. I'm Sharon O'Neill, your very own Highland host and self-proclaimed chief of the Joy Bunny clan. I spoke about Joy Bunnies ages ago in the podcast and it stuck in my brain. And if you're new to this podcast and you're wondering what it's all about, well, in a nutshell, this is where we talk about everything and anything in life that we find interesting. This season is all about the folklore of trees and plants, but in the past I've covered topics like gardening, productivity, the supernatural, there was prepping season, that was good, movies, mysteries, you name it, we talk about it here. I'm always open to suggestions for season or episode topics, and I'm still looking for listener ghost stories for a future season, so if you can help, please use the contact email address in the description and let me know your stories and ideas. I'd really appreciate that. You'll notice, by the way, that there are other links there to my blog, my main YouTube channel. This is going out on the podcast channel, but I do have another YouTube channel. And also my Buy Me a Coffee page where you can get some great downloads and leave me a little tip to show me some support, which I would be very grateful for, and it would help keep this podcast on the air. I do want to improve my equipment that I use to do this, and I can't do it on my own. So if you're able to just say, here's a little tip for all your hard work, I would really appreciate it. No pressure if you can't, totally get it, but you can always do other things like share the podcast, subscribe, all that other stuff. And a little heads up for you too, if you are in the UK, it is seed sowing time. And if you use the link in the description below for budget seeds, use my code SO'Neill10 and you will get 10% off your order. That is where I got my seeds from this year, and their prices are amazing. I was so happy. They even do specials where some of their packets are like 15 pence. You cannot go wrong with that. So give them a try, and by doing so, you'll also be helping out the channel. And a big thank you to Budget Seeds as well for doing that. And I really do appreciate them helping out this very small channel. Now, back to the topic of the week. And this week, we are taking a look at the folklore of two more plants. And we're going to start with another one of my favourites, the stinging nettle. And I'm going to explain in just a little while what I actually use it for, because I do use it a lot. Stinging nettle must be known by now to every gardener. You only have to brush past it once to become instantly familiar with that long-lasting burning sensation. I think we've all had it. Oh, by the way, do not use dock leaves if you do get stung with stinging nettle. I know we've always been told to use dock. No, plantain. You know those? Here they're long, thin. You know the plantain is a weed. It's a herb. I use it as a herb. But get one of those big long grass plantain leaves, scrunch it all up, rub it on the sting. You'll thank me. Trust me, you'll thank me. Much better than dock. Anyway, so going back to the sting, we know now that it happens because the tiny hairs on the leaves kind of inject histamine into our skin and cause inflammation. But at one time, however, according to Ruth Binney in her book Plant Lore and Legend, people in Ireland actually thought the hairs were the prongs of the devil's pitchfork. But despite its ability to cause so much pain, our friend the stinging nettle was loved by the Scots during Beltane, which is a pagan festival held on the 1st of May, or May Day as it's otherwise known, and it's to celebrate the coming of summer and is often associated with fertility and purification, with a big old fire being part of the proceedings as well. You've probably heard of the Beltane fires. They still happen in various towns throughout the country. And if you caught last week's episode, this whole celebrating May Day thing will not be new to you. If you remember, last week it was elderflowers which were used to protect you from evil spirits. And even though I'm Scottish, I'm not a pagan, so I don't do the whole Beltane thing, but I do use stinging nettle, and I have done so for quite a few years now. I've been doing something which to me was just part of foraging, but it turns out it's something that was done many years ago, and that is to make nettle soup. In the old days, nettle soup was made because it was one of the first greens to reappear and offer great nutrition and energy after that difficult winter where it's been harder to find food. Now, they might not have known this at the time, but nettles, and I looked this up to check, they are rich in vitamins A, C, D and K, as well as minerals like iron, calcium and magnesium. Additionally, Stinging nettles contain protein and are a good source of antioxidants which help protect your cells from damage caused by free radicals. It is a fantastic plant. In fact, it's so good, I put a recipe for nettle soup on my blog before, which I'll put a link to in the notes so you can go and give it a go yourself. It's delicious. You're going to love it. And just while I'm on the subject of using nettles, I do also make nettle tea and tincture. We use it in our family to treat hay fever. Now, I'm not a herbalist, so I'm not saying you should, disclaimer alert, but it is said to help with allergies and it works for us. That's all I can tell you. I also make nettle wine, but that's a story for another day. Now, it can't be a folklore episode without the fairies, and at one time there was a Celtic belief that if you saw a good thick bundle of nettles growing, that meant that the fairies were living nearby. And at the other end of the UK from where I am, in Wales, it was believed that placing nettles under the pillow of somebody who was sick would reveal their fate based on the colour of the leaves the next day. Green indicated they would recover, whereas brown suggested impending death. Not so good. Stinging nettle is also one of the essential herbs used in the Anglo-Saxon healing 9 herbs charm, which I struggle to say, and I checked this out a bit more on the site Creative Cottage, which I'll put a link to in the notes as well, and it says this about the healing 9 herbs charm. The 9 herbs charm is part of the Lacnunga, I hope I've said that right, or remedies text, which is an Anglo-Saxon text believed to be written around 1000 AD. The original manuscript is currently housed in the British Museum, in case you were wondering. That's where it is at the moment. And the herbs, or worts as they were called, mentioned in this charm are the 9 sacred herbs of the Anglo-Saxons, which they believed had been given to humans by Woden, the god of healing. And these 9 herbs are Una, or mugwort, waybread, plantain, one of my favourites, stoon, or lamb's cress, atterloth, otherwise known as betony, maeve, which is chamomile, wergaloo, which is our friend the nettle, crabapple, chervil, and fennel. Now, the 9 herbs charm was supposed to help the person reciting it to heal a sick person by invoking the god Woden and his skills as a healer. Now, around the same time, people believed you could make your hair grow by using nettles. This would be done by squeezing the juice from nettle leaves. Yeah, good luck with that. And then dipping your comb in it every morning. You would comb your hair one way and then the opposite way to make your hair grow like, well, a weed. You could also use nettles to protect yourself from evil spirits. Of course you could, by carrying some in a little pouch with some milfoil. Now, these nettle pouches could also break curses and see them sent back to the original sender. Dreaming of being stung by nettles would mean disappointment, whereas dreaming of gathering nettles meant someone thought well of you. I don't think I've ever dreamt about gathering nettles. It's not a good sign. Anyway, moving on from there, in Norse mythology, plants with defensive features like nettle were associated with Thor, the god of thunder. So during storms, people would burn nettles to seek Thor's protection against lightning strikes. It was also said that nettles were used by the Norse god Loki to help him make his magical fishing net, which isn't as far-fetched as it sounds. Any decent bushcrafter will be able to tell you that the stalk of the nettle plant can be used to make pretty good cordage. Now, I haven't tried it myself. I've always wanted to give it a go since I saw Ray Mears doing it years ago on one of his shows, and I've always thought, I must try that. Maybe this year. Maybe this is the year, but it does make good cordage. So, making a fishing net, yeah, I think that'll be possible. Magical one, maybe not so much. Apparently Loki did it. Now, an interesting bit of nettle history comes from the Romans, who thought it was a good idea to invade Britain, but they were a little bit concerned about the weather. Newsflash, we all are. Now, some people say that the Romans brought nettle seeds here with them so they could grow the plant here, while others argue it was always growing here anyway, they didn't have to do that. But however they got hold of it, they would use the nettles to sting themselves on purpose to make the skin warmer. Now, We know now that this was the inflammation, but they believed it helped them in cold weather, and that's how they coped in cold weather. Apparently they would just go about stinging themselves with nettle. You'd think more clothes would be an obvious option, but apparently not. But interestingly, the Romans also believed that nettles could be used to combat rheumatic joints, a sort of fight fire with fire, and it seems that they might have been onto something. There's a lot of studies being done now, and scientists believe that stinging nettles might actually help with arthritis. What they found is that where nettles touch painful joints, they do interfere with pain signals and can actually help to reduce the pain levels that the person's feeling. Now, as with all these things, more research needs to be done, but I thought it was worth a mention. I found it interesting that Romans were believing it and doing that, and now we're only using science to back it up. Many, many, many years later, we're catching up with the Romans. A little bit sad, but there you go. Now we are going to move on from the pain of the stinging nettle onto a very interesting tree, the rowan. If you've ever wandered through the countryside, you may well have spotted the rowan tree, also known as the mountain ash, with its feathery leaves and bright berries. It's a striking sight. But did you know it's one of the most magical and superstitious trees in the UK? From warding off witches to guiding lost travellers, the rowan has a long and mysterious history, in this country at least. Now, the rowan tree has been feared, revered and celebrated for centuries. In Scottish and English folklore, it is known as the witch tree, and it is believed to have powerful protective properties against evil spirits and dark magic. It used to be said that every garden should have at least one rowan tree growing in it to keep the witches away. I even heard that as a kid. You'd hear the old folklore stories getting passed on. No, I'm not ancient, it's just something that we all got told. People would plant rowan trees near their homes, especially near their doorways and garden gates, to prevent witches from entering. Some even placed sprigs of rowan above their doors or inside their chimneys, and if you really didn't want any witches in your house, all you had to do was bring some rowan branches into your house on Good Friday, and that would prevent witches from being able to enter your home. But protection didn't stop at homes. Farmers would tie rowan twigs to the collars of their livestock, especially cows, to prevent witches from stealing their milk. Some shepherds even wove rowan branches into the handles of their crooks to protect their sheep. Rowan sprigs would be hung in the rafters of cow sheds, and even as late as 1846 in Yorkshire in England, farmers were still fitting collars to their newborn lambs and around their pigs' necks to ward off evil magic. Now, witches weren't the only supernatural beings linked to the rowan tree. Oh no, fairies were too, of course, and in some parts of Wales and England, rowan trees were believed to be sacred to the fae. Cutting down a rowan was thought to bring bad luck, and some even believed that fairies would take revenge on those who dared to harm their sacred tree. On the flip side, if you were good to the rowan tree and respected it, it was said to bring good fortune and even grant wishes. Some old traditions even involve tying bits of ribbon or fabric to rowan's branches while making a wish, which presumably the rowan tree would grant in return for your kindness. Rowan trees were also planted in graveyards to protect the area from any evil spirit, but that isn't the only place you'll find them. They're often found near stone circles and sacred sites, and some believe that they were planted there deliberately by druids. Now, these trees were seen as gateways to the spirit world, portals even, and offering protection and guidance to those who sought deeper knowledge. And I must admit, I've noticed this in quite a few places that I've been to locally. Not so much being portals, but the fact that these sacred places have lots and lots of rowan trees. And one in particular, the one that I'm thinking of, there's a Bronze Age burial site not far from me, and I've been to it lots and lots of times. It's called Cairns, and it's an amazing place to visit, and it has huge stone circular cairns and these enormous standing stones. And yes, there are rowan trees all around it. And just to add to that while I'm on the subject, and this is where I'm thinking this whole portal thing, bear with me for just a second, let me go down this little rabbit trail. It was at Cairns around dusk one day apparently that a woman reported seeing and she swears she saw this huge, 7 or 8 feet tall, she swears, this hairy figure walking on 2 legs in the Clavercairns area, heading towards the Culloden battlefield direction. Now that's only half a mile away. Now you might be thinking, okay, so one person saw it, but no, lots of people have apparently seen this figure, this tall, hairy, can I just say Bigfoot type figure around Clavercairns. And I'm thinking, you know, I love all this stuff. Is it to do with the Rowan trees? Is it a portal like the Jews used to believe? Is that where these things come from? There's lots of people are reporting the same thing, and I don't believe it's just going to be some homeless guy wandering around Clavercairns. I know I'm digressing slightly, but I wanted to mention it since we're talking about that area. But staying with Scotland just a little longer, in parts of the country, rowan trees were known as the wayfarer's tree, and people believed that carrying a piece of rowan wood or planting a rowan near crossroads would help lost travellers to find their way. Some stories even tell of rowan trees guiding weary wanderers back to safety after they've been lost in storms or heavy fog, and in fact one old tale does tell of a traveller caught in a thick Highland mist. He was disoriented and cold, and when he came across a rowan tree he decided to have a rest underneath it. When he woke up, the fog had lifted, and he found to his surprise he was right near the path that he had lost only the night before. So yes, he was able to find his way home. Coincidence? Maybe. Or perhaps the rowan tree was watching over him and guiding him on his way. The rowan tree's magical reputation, however, wasn't just limited to the British Isles. Oh no! In Norse mythology, the rowan was said to have saved the god Thor from drowning. Now, according to the Prose Edda, which is an old Norse textbook written in Iceland during the 13th century, in case you were wondering, the story goes that Thor was swept away into a mighty river, and just as he was about to be lost, a rowan tree bent down to him, allowing him to grab hold and pull himself to safety. And because of this, the rowan became known as a protector, not just from witches though, from all forms of misfortune, and Vikings and other Norse travellers would carry rowan charms for protection, believing that the tree's magic could help them survive treacherous journeys. But it also makes an appearance in Greek mythology, where Hebe, who was the goddess of youth, passed ambrosia to the gods using her magical chalice. Now at some point, and I don't know how, but she lost this cup to demons, and the gods then sent an eagle to go and retrieve it for her. Unfortunately, a terrible fight broke out, and where the feathers and drops of blood fell to the earth, they turned into rowan trees. Taking a slightly different view, the rowan was also used back in the day to predict winter weather. In regions like Newfoundland and parts of Europe, a heavy crop of rowan berries were traditionally believed to indicate a harsh winter ahead. Maybe the thinking was that it was planning to provide food for the birds during the harsh times. But in contrast, however, in some Finnish and Swedish traditions, abundant berries indicated a mild winter because it was thought that the tree couldn't bear heavy fruit and heavy snow at the same time. It is said that even today some people carry small rowan charms or hang dried rowan branches in their homes for good luck. And if you ever find yourself hiking in the UK and come across a lone rowan standing on a hillside, remember, it might just be there to guide you as it has done for other travellers over the centuries. So all in all, the rowan is more than just a pretty tree with bright berries and feathery leaves. It's steeped in centuries of folklore, mystery and magic. Whether it was used to ward off witches, guide lone travellers or offer protection from misfortune, it remains one of the most magical trees in British folklore. And that, my friends, brings us to the end of this week's episode. But if you know any more interesting bits of lore to do with the stinging nettle or that wonderful rowan tree, please let us all know in the comments. And that just leaves me to say thank you very much for your company this week. If you have enjoyed the episode, don't forget to give it a thumbs up, a like, a follow, and share it with somebody that you know. Don't be greedy, share it out. I really hope you'll join me again next week for more folklore tales. But until then, keep finding the magic in all those little things. And of course, you take care of your wee self.